welcome to everybody for this new session on sustainability fundamentals. And I think it's a pleasure for all of us to be here today. And Andrea, Rea, I think it's a great job you're doing, great opportunity, great speakers, passionate people. So definitely, I think that this is all we need for this great and an essential topic. So I think that before we start, we'll all agree that in the world of luxury and performance, the superyacht industry faces a unique challenge, which is how to balance its reputation with luxury and opulence, with a growing imperative for environmental responsibility. As the industry evolves, sustainability has become not just an option, but I think we will all agree a necessity, and prompting stakeholders to rethink traditional practices. So today we are delighted to have with us Tamara Ellis and Rob Van Tol as guest speakers with us. Tamara is the sustainability lead at RevOcean, and she will explaining later on actually what her role actually entails. Robert is executive director and co-founder of the Water Revolution Foundation. They are both pivotal figures in advancing sustainability within the superyacht industry. They lead initiatives to promote eco-friendly practices and technologies, to establish rigorous industry standards, and support ocean conservation. So through our discussions today with Tamara and Rob, we'll examine today how the superyacht industry can align itself with the principle of sustainability, encompassing environmental, economic, and also social dimension. We will see that these are the three pillars of sustainability. We will also explore the practical steps, innovative technologies, and policy initiatives essential for steering the industry towards a more sustainable future. So let's start without further ado. And I think that it's important to define first what is sustainability. So maybe Rob, how would you describe actually sustainability in the superyacht industry, considering both environmental and economical aspects?
Thanks, Janet. Pleasure to be on the show. Thank you also to Yachting International Radio and to Tamara to be together on this panel. Thank you for this very important question, because it really starts with the correct understanding and adoption of the sustainability concept. You already mentioned economic, environmental, but also social aspects that all need to be in balance for something to be sustainable, and as such to be fit for the future, I would say. Just in simple words, to be able to continue doing things, business practices, for instance, or leisure marine activity for the time to come, for the generations to come, to find the balance between economic gain, social advancing, but also, of course, the environmental impact.
Yeah, I think balance is definitely a key word there. Tamara, can you add maybe something on why this holistic approach is essential, and also to have the social and human element?
Yes, thank you. I just also want to say thanks very much. It's really great to be part of this initiative. I'm very excited to be here. I think the social element sometimes still gets left out of sustainability when it's being looked at, and it's a vital component. We can't achieve environmental sustainability, we can't achieve economic sustainability if we're leaving the social element out. So in the way to go forward, it really is the intersection of these three pillars. Sometimes there's the fourth one, human, which is also put in there, and I think that's also worth the consideration. And I think within the superyacht industry, it's very important to understand that we do have impacts, direct and indirect, both environmental and social.
Yeah. Thanks, Tamara. So now that, let's say, we have briefly reminded the audience the definition, what is sustainability, and actually the three pillars of sustainability, let's explore more the environmental impact of yacht operations and discuss the best practices for managing resources such as water, energy, waste, and how to minimize our footprint on marine ecosystems. Robert, maybe a question for you, which is, how do yacht operations affect actually the marine ecosystems and global resources, and why is it crucial to understand actually this impact?
Well, thanks, Janet. It is evident that there is a tremendous impact that yachting has on the natural environment that it is in. That can be made relative by comparing it to shipping or to other industries, which is sometimes done when people give presentations or when numbers are being mentioned. We try to refrain from that because it doesn't need a context. It needs actually isolation. You need to look at the impact from this activity that actually colliding with the very purpose of it. So the yachting lifestyle is to take a luxurious lifestyle, but on the water, and enjoy everything that marine life and the oceans have to offer. If that comes at the cost of it, something is off. So we have been moving throughout the decades of this industry. It's a relatively young industry. 2/3 of the fleet has been built in the last 20 years. So there has been a tremendous growth in this industry for people taking their holidays and leisure to the water. And that comes at a cost. And that comes at environmental impact, both direct and indirect. Direct from anti-fouling products, from noise and vibrations, not only from the motherships, but also from the toys. There are indirect emissions that are locally produced, locally affecting the water and air. And there are indirect pollutions. Again, emissions, but for example, also production, transportation, waste from consumables, everything around the operations of yachts. And of course, highlighting these elements comes as a confrontation sometimes to the industry, but there are also a lot of solutions, a lot of choice. It's just about making conscious choice. And we try to emphasize that there's always room for less of the same things before you even need to make any changes. So it doesn't compromise comfort or a luxury feeling or the experience. It may actually contribute to this experience, but probably we'll touch upon that a little later. So I just wanted to emphasize that, yes, we need to isolate this impact coming from operations, but especially focus on the solutions because they are there.
Can you maybe list, Tamara or Rob, can you maybe list some of the solutions that are out there existing already and which can be implemented actually easily?
Yes, I can start with that one. I think it's how we address things to begin with. So I think when we're looking for solutions, it's not always something that we need to do as a last minute attachment. It's something we need to consider at the beginning of the process. It's at the point of contact, I suppose. So we need to really bring sustainability thinking into everything that we're doing. It needs to be a bottom line. It needs to not be an after consideration. So I know, a very simple example to use is we know washing machines release microplastics, and we can add a filter to a washing machine, which is a solution we can do to reduce microplastics. But we can also change the way we operate. We can also change our maintenance and our management of materials on board. And then we can go further than that, and we can look back to the beginning of that process, and we can start to consider things like, what materials are we bringing on board, and can we reduce the plastic within those fabrics and those materials? And in doing that, we're already addressing the problem before it's become a problem. And we're supporting an industry the clothing industry is actually increasing its polyester use at the moment, incredibly increasing its polyester use. So we can be part of a change with that. And I think things like that become very important within the industry, but also beyond the industry as well. Yeah,
I 100% agree. If I may add to that, I think elements of operations can sound very simple or minor, but if you count them up and times the size of the fleet, these are tremendous changes that can be made on a daily basis. And I agree 100% with Tamara. It's not a sort of afterthought or see how we can do things a little bit better. No, if you start embracing this approach and you really sort of sign up to the commitment, you can do a lot. And we have been creating, for instance, environmental crew guidelines with crew to share best practices, to start sharing what is being done on board that is better for the environment than practices, I would say the past, but are currently still happening. So just to inspire each other and utilize this tremendous community of crew that has great experience, very practically oriented, of course, limited by time, pressured from the owners community. So there are great ideas, and these deserve to be shared. As Tamara said, from filters for washing machines to more environmental and coral sensitive sun creams, and etc., etc. Plastic provisions is something that you already can address with the supplier before it even comes on board, or you reject all the packaging materials that comes with it because you bring that to your next destination. And if that is a very remote area that typically gets visited by yachts, you immediately create a burden if you put all your garbage basically on their island, for instance. You create immediately an impact there and cause them to have to deal with your waste. So it can all be prevented.
I think there's two really interesting things that you brought up there, Robert, as well. I think actually working with suppliers and really going down the line of rejecting packaging and rejecting things, like pushing for change at that level so that we're not carrying that waste with us and we're not becoming, we're part of the change and the positive change of these things, I think is really good. And the other thing you said that I think is really important is the sharing. And yachting is traditionally a very confidential industry. And when it comes to sustainability, the best we can do is to really share that information. And the crew guidelines is a great example of that, where actually there are people that it's just a lot of people are doing this in silos, and sustainability can be extremely overwhelming. It's very time consuming to do the research. And if you can suddenly have this open discussion about it and we can all benefit from it and we can really take that and transfer it across the industry and hopefully beyond the industry as well, then we start to see some really amazing net gains from what we can achieve as a group of people.
Yeah, thanks, Tamara. It was really great received by the industry, actually better than we expected. Especially management companies, for instance, of course, serving their fleets. They were so happy that we made these available just for free and open source, because as you said, it would take them a lot of time, effort, and perhaps they wouldn't have the knowledge necessarily in-house to start this. So that was the great reaction that we got. So many jumped on board right away to support it and send it to their fleet and crews right away. So happy with that action and movement, actually.
Yeah, I think that communication is really key, and sharing also the best practices and all we can learn, basically. So develop workshops, conferences, forums as this one, guidelines, I think is essential. And regarding the operations, we will have the next sessions, which will really delve actually into all the little steps and actions that can be taken to enhance actually sustainability on board and to reduce the impact. But like to summarize, I think that definitely what you say, it's really a holistic approach. It's not just on the constructions, on the refit, but on all actually the chain actually of the yachting from construction up to operations. So like we've got solutions like energy efficient system, waste management, very important, through innovative management practices, using renewable energies like solar panels, wind actually energy as well, use eco-friendly materials in the constructions and the maintenance, water weight management, so desalinations, for instance, system, and avoid water pollution, or abolish as well is very important, the use of single plastic user on board as well. So we see that it's really like a holistic actually approach from construction to operations. We spoke about the guidelines. Can you share maybe some other example of technical innovations that have made a big difference in sustainability?
Tamara?
Sure. Well, as you know, I work for RevOcean, so I suppose one that I would like to draw attention to is the fact that one area that technology is rapidly changing and becoming a lot more accessible is actually in science. And there is there's a way for yacht crew to include a very positive impact and to become involved with smaller, smarter, and more easily deployed science equipment. So yachts are already doing this, some of them, but I think there's a great opportunity to link up science with yachts. There are obviously, I know there's another session coming up where seakeepers are involved, and there's also Yachts for Science and things like this. There's also citizen science programs away from the technology side of stuff. But just purely on the technology side of stuff, it's becoming more possible to actually work with scientists, work with local researchers, and to start using yachts as a platform to collect data that goes towards conservation. And this is quite different. We often talk about sustainability very much from a reductions perspective, which is completely what we need to be doing. But I think there is also an element where we can start to really, really push that kind of conservation element as well. So yeah, I obviously that's RevOcean being my current role is, I think this is amazing, and I'd really like to see more yachts interested in it and seeing where they can dive in and kind of be involved in this side of things.
100% agree, Tamara. What we have been advocating since recently is a 3R model, and that's reduce. So I already mentioned it, less of the existing choices, which is a lot you can reduce. So yachting has never been about efficiency. Yeah. That's a sad thing, but it's also a good thing because there is a lot of room for improvement. So energy consumption has been really high, and there are solutions both technically and in behavior that can really reduce the energy consumption. And that's something we need to focus on before we look into the remove actions. Because if you, for instance, swap your diesel as an energy source, for instance, for biodiesel like HVO, it's not, of course, the idea to just switch source to use then a lot of that scarce material. So reduce is always the number one priority. But then if you indeed look into alternatives, then HVO biodiesel can be really significant reduction directly of emissions. And that's something that we have been researching and advocating, but there's very little uptake from what we see. There's all kind of perceived risks among the operators, and we really want to learn where this is coming from. So what are the barriers for bunkering HVO? Sure, it can be availability, might be price, but I think those are to overcome. And if we are able to offer HVO more strategically or even manage to bring down the price, there are still barriers for bunkering and switching to HVO. And we would really like to learn from the operators why that is. What is the perceived risk to do that? Because it's such an obvious, actually, action that reduces up to 90% of CO2 emissions directly. And that's, for us, it's a no-brainer, but it should be a no-brainer for yachting. And then the third R, and that's to Tamara's point, repair. We really need to start participating in the ecosystem restoration activities to make sure we have a healthy ocean to enjoy, both for yachting and humanity on this planet, to actually engage in that and play our role. And although yachting might be relatively small or budget might be relatively limited, you can really have a positive impact. And even that positive impact can be quantified. So you can even compare negative footprint with a positive impact investment. And if you will, you can balance that or even go further and show that you are positively contributing to the marine life and our oceans. And that's something that we try to advocate as you know, this is part of the yachting package on 2024. There's no one-way relationship anymore with to go yachting and use the oceans, but not to give anything back.
Yeah, I think that this is a tendency of it. I mean, apart, yes, of course, operations, which is the easiest way, but I think that more people trying to think or at least promote actually the refit side, which will be probably much easier than that rather than starting from scratch in terms of the investment as well, which is implied. And as far as your remark, why people are not embracing it, the thing is that probably because when something is new, the normal reaction is to reject. When you don't understand, it demands actually too much effort, plus the fact that the investment costs, transportation barriers, production, and bunkering facilities. So I think that slowly we're getting there, but it will take a bit of time. But I think that we start to see actually some projects that start to use actually mix energy systems or new kind of hydrogens. I think there are two yachts at the moment that are working on this type of boats as well. So yeah, I think that slowly we'll get there, but definitely push the refit side is definitely something to watch. And maybe as well something which, as far as technology is concerned, AI probably will also play a big role with helping like route optimization, for instance, or reduce consumption or smart energy systems on board. So I think that in terms of technology, this will help as well, actually, to develop the sustainability practices on board. I don't know, what's your view on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, optimized systems is what I just mentioned is a big opportunity there. Not only with new builds, there are also the existing fleet, of course. So there are 5,800 yachts, according to Superyacht Times, over 30 meters. It's a tremendous fleet, and these yachts are not likely to disappear or be scrapped at some point. So they continue to be in the fleet, which continues to be the responsibility of the industry. So, for instance, at our IMO level, they look at the impact of the entire fleet. So we're still collectively responsible for this. Not only, the shipyards that once built it, or now the operators or owners. This is a collective responsibility. And therefore, we need to look for solutions both for new build, of course, not leaving any opportunity underutilized there, but also look at the existing fleet and how can we upgrade them. And as I said, there's room for improvement. So we should definitely go for refit as an existing mechanism of upgrading yachts and make environmental upgrades part of that.
And what is the reaction you get from owners?
Mixed. Some.
The difference between the old generation and the new generation or not?
No, I wouldn't call it a generation thing. Of course, I can't look in the heads or in the family influences, but there's definitely no generation thing, to my opinion. But there's just like in society, it's a representation of society. There's the ones that are really concerned and they are urging their teams to look into solutions or alternatives. Or beside, not because we talk about owners, there I think also are a lot of potential owners that might not join yachting for those reasons. They don't see enough solutions, they feel too impactful, and we don't make it probably accessible enough to reinvent yachting, let's put it this way. So we have potential owners and existing owners, and there's the 25% that doesn't care, the 20 to 75% that if it's possible and affordable, then happy to do so. And there's the last 25% that really wants to push things forward and actually pay for innovations that then are being able to share it in the industry. There's a great example by Project Zero. This is a yacht in-built, so that this is not just a concept. It's in-built at Vitter Shipyard in the Netherlands. Freepak and Dijkstra are involved, and the owner wanted to be open source. So all the research that has been done is being made available through Foundation Zero. And it's a sailing yacht, so it can do hydro generation, so it generates energy while sailing. That's being stored in batteries. Solar energy is being harvested. Even heat is being stored in salt batteries. So there are a lot of innovations there. Of course, for a sailing yacht, also counting on a lot of frequent operations to actually fuel and fill the batteries. But there is no fossil energy on board, no fossil fuels, no combustion engines. Yeah, this is a great example. It's just one, so it's still the exception, not the rule, but let's try and push with everyone, all the influencers we have in our industry, to make this kind of innovative projects the rule rather than the exception.
I think that's a really good point. And I think there are people that are coming, into this as owners that do want to push that. And they are, and the nice thing about that is it's private funding. We're seeing, projects happen quite quickly in that sense. But then on the other hand, there's a responsibility for the industry to also start putting that agenda forward and to really start offering that and to suggesting and really, because a lot of the things as well, once there's a momentum to it, there will be actually potentially cost benefits attached to these things. There will be, as soon as the infrastructure catches up with it, we are looking at a lot of potential benefits for the people that own these vessels in the long run as well. And so I think it's really bringing that into the discussions that we're having with owners and with potential charter guests as well, and to really kind of champion that within the industry.
And legislators are also not sitting still. And of course, it's maritime legislation, so not necessarily applicable to yachts always, both from threshold point of view or the applicability. But we need to stay ahead of that. Also, just because we can. I mean, this is yachting. Everything is possible. So why is this then all of a sudden difficult?
Until we have the regulation, because maybe this is what people are waiting. This is human as well, to wait till the very last minute. And at the end, it's worse because the regulator don't really understand what they're regulating about. And then it's counterproductive. So maybe there's a way actually to be proactive and not reactive. And speaking about policy and regulation, can maybe one of you, maybe Robert, just enumerate the major, let's say, regulations that regarding waste management, water conservation, and emissions, maybe? What are the main regulations applicable today?
To my knowledge, there are not many. You have, let's say, legislations that you need to track your energy consumption, or let's say your fuel consumption. But you need to track it, but subsequently there's nothing really being done with that data unless you have a very proactive management company that collects that and do something with that. But let's say that the generic environmental legislation from the IMO applies, then Europe tends to be a little bit more, let's say, advanced. So there are legislations on under development there. But we see primarily local legislations being advanced quickest and most, let's say, impactful. So we have, of course, anchoring restrictions in southern France as a good example of local legislations that does affect yachting. It's a behavioral element, not necessarily construction related, but it is a good example. You have the areas where you need to use the SCR systems on the engine, so the emission or engine exhaust after treatment systems. Those areas are, of course, expanding. That's then again an International Maritime Organization legislation. Good example are the fjords in Norway, where you are not allowed to use combustion engines. So those kind of examples are just a growing list. And fair enough. I mean, that we are trying to enjoy and enter these kind of remote areas and enjoy the beauty of nature there. But yeah, if we come and pollute, then that can't be the right approach.
I think,
I was
just going to say, I think it's really interesting that we're seeing in this landscape, we're seeing an increase in expedition yachts, for example, and people wanting to go further afield and wanting to go into these environments. And at the same time, that is coupled with this like rapid kind of increase of regulation in these areas that's really going to force a change anyway, I think. And we either jump on board early, as you say, or, you know, it becomes a retrofit and yachting gets left behind. So, yeah, it makes sense to move forward with it in good time. And, I mean, there's enough out there now in terms of regulation, I think, to really suggest that it's only a matter of time until it catches up with where you are.
Yeah, most rules are for 5,000 GT and up. There are not many yachts above 5,000 GT, maybe RevOcean. But yeah, that threshold will come down. That's very likely, and probably also should come down to keep the pressure on. But again, then you want to already be ahead of the curve, and you want to have something in place that, as you said, Janet, fits yachting characteristics. Because we have been, for instance, developing the Yacht Environmental Transparency Index.
This was my next question. So go ahead. So with the Water Revolution Foundation, you are being proactive.
Yeah, we try to be, but of course we rely on the industry participation to speed up. But this is a great joint industry project example. 18 participating companies, most of them are well-known shipyards, design studios, and 3 research institutes. We said, okay, how do we assess and compare yachts on their environmental credentials? So what do we need to do to reflect that yacht-specific character? Because such an assessment is already offered by IMO. It's called EEDI, Energy Efficiency Design Index. But that counts on ships being in operation 90% of the time, because that's how they make money. Yachts are 10% of the time underway and 90% stationary. So that's complete opposite of how commercial ships are operating. Then it's a logical focus of IMO to be focused on propulsion energy and not so much on hotel energy. And yachts is again the opposite. Not necessarily the opposite. Propulsion is more or less 50%, but hotel function at least 50% as well. And that's something that is overlooked in IMO. Regardless of IMO, that's something that we can tackle, even with existing yachts, because of course changing the propulsion package is quite impactful, but all energy consumers in the hotel function and maybe the generation of energy on board is something that we really can improve upon. And Yeti is meant to understand what is my current performance of the systems. So it's not looking at owners, it's looking at the system of the yachts and see what is the upward potential and how do they function on this average operational profile that we found of 10% cruising, 30% anchor, and more than 50% of the time in the marina. So that's an example of proactive rather than waiting to be regulated. And whether this then is going to be offered in IMO, that's in the end up to the industry. This was a very important, is still a joint industry project. Currently focuses on the operations of yachts, but now we're going to move into build materials, maybe even build facilities, just to take into account that entire life cycle of yachts where we need to reflect on.
No, thanks, it's very interesting. And
can I just add to that as well? I think it's important that we do have
a question, which is probably linked actually to Rob just what mentioned. How are super yachts currently tracking their consumption? Is there a universal approach? Is it analog or digital in nature from School Marine?
There is the SEEMP. Not sure what the abbreviation exactly stands for, but it's at least energy management protocol, I believe. So it's tracking fuel consumption, and that's it. Other than that, there are probably some volunteers that track their data, either on behalf of the owner or management companies that have something in place. But mostly it's voluntary. There's no, to my knowledge, no mandatory system to monitor, which is also resulting in the lack of this data. We basically don't know. Manufacturers of yachts don't even know how their fleet actually behaves because there are not many sensors or these tracking devices are built in. So, and now it's coming because now they want to learn more and more how their fleet is actually operating to improve their current models. But surprisingly, it hasn't been done in the past. And now we have a sort of data gap, which we try to fill in. For this operational profile, we used AIS. So 103 yachts accumulated to 297 years of AIS data, which is not bad, but it's of course only a sample of 103 yachts. And AIS is not perfect, let's put it that way.
Tamara, were you going to add something?
Yes, I was just going to say, I think it's really important that as an industry that we do, like Yeti, come up with something that is very much fit for purpose, because otherwise we're going to have these other systems applied to us at some point, and that's going to be quite problematic. And then I just wanted to also comment then on the SEEM plans. So they're standardized, but they're not really part of any audit system. So they're not standardized. They're mandatory. They're not standardized. It would be good if they were standardized, because at the moment ships write their own ones, but they're not part of any audit system. So it would be good to see that ships over 5,000 gross ton are required to share a methodology and collect data now. And this does affect a few of the bigger yachts. And then there's a third component to that, which is the calculation of the carbon intensity of vessels. But again, it's not applied enough across the industry yet.
Moving to conservation effort, what are some key conservation projects you support or have supported and that have made a difference?
Well, RevOcean is fundamentally about ocean research and conservation. And currently we are still waiting for the ship to finish its build. So for those that don't know, Rev is due to launch in 2026. But we are currently working on the itinerary for that maiden voyage and looking at who we'll be partnering with during that time period and going forward as well. But the idea being that Rev will offer a platform and open that up for use by scientists and researchers and artists and policymakers. And so I think it's really the whole concept of Rev is really to support conservation. In the meantime, we are involved in a number of projects as well, including we've got a couple of, we have a sub and an ROV currently that are in operation and have been used. And one of the interesting projects that the sub was involved in was in the Chagos Islands and around that, the Chagos Marine Park. And it did basically it went down and it carried out some deep sea exploration in this area. And then that information was then used to share with the local area, and that then goes into informing the management of that area. So, I mean, there are very positive ways, I think, that RevOcean is being involved currently and what we're doing, what we can do without a ship, knowing that we're waiting for the ship to be complete and launched.
That sounds super exciting and definitely brings us to the social human element and to the engagement of communities, which is vital as well, actually, when we discuss about sustainability. Yeah,
I think Rev is an absolute fantastic project, and right from the start and with the purpose of it. The thing is, not everybody is of that extreme approach. So there's a lot of yacht owners, a lot of yachting community members that want to contribute to ocean conservation, ocean health, but not necessarily know how or how much or what to do, maybe non-financially also offering time. So we've been working on a program called Ocean Assist, and that's really to help the yachting community to make a positive impact and to make a right positive impact. So how do you know which project is the most effective to support? Well, that's a question for experienced marine scientists. So we have been working with a scientific advisory board that selects projects for us to advocate to yachting and then to collect the funding, pass it on to this project and make the next program possible. The current one that we are promoting is important marine mammal areas. It was mentioned in the previous session, actually, with Matthew and Norma, by Charles Barber from Switzerland for the Oceans. We just teamed up to promote the Northwest Atlantic project. We're currently fundraising for that. What it does is it brings together the scientists with data on that area. So entire east coast of the US, Bahamas, Caribbean, and even the Gulf of Mexico. Because there is also a lot of data already available. It's not always that there is data missing. There is also a lot of data, but that needs to be mobilized, brought together, analyzed, tested with criteria. So nominated areas for protection can actually be validated. And that's the program we have been supporting. The Northeast Atlantic has been finished. It resulted in 36 new areas that are important to marine mammals, which means they actually breed, feed, or sleep there, which means this is an area to take into consideration. It's not banned from human activity necessarily. It's just to policies, for instance, wind parks, but also operations of ships, to just make more informed, conscious decisions, and when needed, adjust plans or adjust routes or speed or behavior, anything of that above, to just be in line with what nature needs. We are coming in their environment as humans, so we need to adapt, and then we can exist very well hand in hand. And that's something that we have been advocating. So on the 10th of September, we have a first webinar on IMAS for more information, of course, and support.
So we are all welcome.
Everyone is welcome, and we take a very insightful approach. So it's not just a plain fundraiser. It's really to explain why is this important and what can yachting do to support, because it's not only financially supporting these maps. If we manage to get them on the bridges of yachts, we can actually lead by example by adapting our behavior, our routing, our speeds, our toys or not to the needs of these animals, because they have tremendous impact on positive impact on the absorption of CO2, for instance. So whales, I'm sure everybody has seen the film of David Attenborough, where he explains that whales are boosting the existence of phytoplankton, and phytoplankton absorbs CO2 and releases oxygen. So that's a nature-based solution by just supporting these marine mammals.
Do you have companies that have already, or owners that have already confirmed actually the participation to this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's great. That's something that we're growing, and we're also working now on a model of rewarding that kind of support. So it's being quantified in positive blue carbon effect. So you can actually certify that and claim it as such.
Which will be good for the image problem actually the yachting industry is facing as well.
It could be a side effect. I don't know if that's, let's say, a remedy for the reputation, but definitely it's something that
we should be communicating more, I think, on this kind of projects.
Yeah, and I think then the reliability of the project and the quantifiable effects that justify this support is then very important for transparency.
So definitely there are plenty of opportunities, plenty of advantages, but yeah, so just towards the end, what are the main challenges you think that we have to face actually, and what are the few steps actually that can easily be taken actually to go to move towards actually this path of sustainability and yachting?
Well, number one, in my view, is education. There is just a huge knowledge gap, and I had the same. I mean, what I've learned since the inception of Water Revolution 5 years ago is a tremendous steep learning curve, and then still. And we try to bring those learnings across to the industry, but it's sometimes very difficult to get the right attention, to get the right target audience, because we have a great following, but those are probably the ones that are already convinced and supporting. So it's the other group that we need to get in front of. And the risk of a lack of knowledge is that issues or potential risks are being downplayed. And that's the worst we can do, is just to keep addressing things as sustainability is sort of feature that we need to take. It can be a cool business model. No, it's fundamental. And it's also not a competitive advantage. This is something that we need to do all together, and a collective responsibility. And it needs a coordinated approach. In the previous session, Norma said nobody disagrees that we want healthy oceans. No, so the goal is clear, but how to get there and to really commit on this road is something else. And that is the challenge for an industry relatively small but quite segregated.
Maybe it would be important as well to demonstrate the long-term benefit also on the economical side, actually, to convince the ones which are perhaps not fully convinced yet as well, because it has a higher cost as well. So I think it's a question of balance, but maybe also demonstrate that on the long term, actually, some decision, even if it's a high investment, could, have.
I'd like to correct that a little bit, or put that in a nuance. There are systems that are more expensive, but I think if you, during operations, save energy, therefore you save money and, of course, emissions, but we talk about cost. We just need to look at things differently. If you look at it from a one-off cost, it might be higher for new build or maybe refit. But if you don't take into considerations those operational gains, you look at a price increase. But as said, you then also need to take into consideration the full cycle of earning that investment back. Plus, maybe if your rating of your yacht improves, then you have a higher resale value, or you have other benefits that you tap into in terms of either pricing or avoidance of taxes that might come into play at some point. So there are
other advantages as well. I would say probably it will be easier to find an insurance as well, and maybe to finance your yacht in the near future, because we'll see that this starts to have an impact as well.
Absolutely. I can tell that from first hand. There is an investment bank that is already using Yeti to understand the, let's say, environmental credentials of projects that they are about to finance, and then either decide to finance or not, or indeed decide on the premium. So there is force from those kind of corporate players in the industry that will apply and at some point influence the finance availability. Insurance might also follow that same path. Maybe marinas want to know the environmental credentials, whether a yacht should be welcomed in their community, just to have the justification to the local community there as well. Not unthinkable.
I also think from a crew perspective, one of the challenges can be meeting expectations and of owners and charterers, and that can be really challenging. That can be challenging in lots of things. For example, even just moving a yacht from A to B, and if you want to hit, the optimal speed for fuel efficiency, that might not be possible if you've got people that are pushing to get there a little bit sooner. So, and how we kind of navigate that and how we can have a voice in that discussion, and we can really push sustainability forward in these areas, I think is going to be quite challenging going forward still for a while. And then I also think another area that's really challenging from the operational side of things is, and we've touched on it a few times, is time. Crew are often very time poor. And so sustainability can be seen as an arduous task as opposed to something that needs to be implemented. And I think it's really important that we start to make it very accessible and to really kind of push that idea that we can do small adjustments, and to get help like the crew guidelines and things like that, really to have a bit more structure in there that supports crew in their move towards more sustainable practices.
What's very important as well is that every little step counts. It's not that we need to do major changes, but even adding all the small little things that you can change has a huge impact already. And this is something that we need to understand, that it's not just for the others. Everybody actually can have a role to play, actually.
It has a role to play, absolutely. Yeah.
Future trends, anything to add about the trends shaping the future on the topic?
I was just elaborating on what Tamara just said about charter. We were at the MIBA charter show in Genoa. We understood from some of the yachts that they do get inquiries on, okay, what is the environmental footprint of 1 week charter, and how does this compare your yacht to the one next door. So there are inquiries and then not very, let's say, complete answers to those questions. And that's something that probably will grow. And plus you will perhaps see more profitable charter yachts that have better environmental credentials and can also be transparent on how they are, whether it's from a system point of view and also the crew operations. So something that definitely is being rewarded probably in the near future.
Actually, I think that's a really good point. And I think there is an incredible potential to address this point by even adding an addendum to the charter agreement that is an environmental component and having that in place so that the yacht crew know where they stand on it, but also the charterer knows what to expect. And so, having a few things in place that actually people are signing on to as part of that charter agreement, I think is a really good way forward to help yacht crew navigate that and to make it very transparent between the two parties.
Yeah.
And I heard recently in a conference actually in south of France, a University of Monaco speaking about slow tourism. Have you heard about that concept?
Yeah.
So tourism, but I mean with a meaning and which has an impact as well on communities, and so which is linked actually to what you were saying.
I think yacht is already relatively slow. I mean, if you want to get somewhere fast, you shouldn't take a yacht. But no, I understand what you mean, and I hope that continues and that yachting definitely jumps
probably
on.
Meaningful actually ways actually to enjoy actually yachting and not just to doing the traditional Monaco, Cannes, Saint-Tropez, hop it up that we see here. But So closing message, what final message would you like to leave about the importance of sustainability in the superyacht industry?
I'll go first. For me, it's bringing sustainability into the bottom line of consideration, into our baseline thinking. It needs to be considered in everything that we're doing, and that's the entire life cycle of things as well. It's when we can't just rely on retrofitting. It is operations, it's build, it's everything, and it's in all the decision making. So quite often it's brought in as a last minute consideration, and it's like, okay, we've decided to do this. Oh, how sustainable is that? As opposed to, this is the more sustainable way of moving forward. This is what we should be doing. How do we make that possible? And I think that's a real flip on things that will help. And it's a big task, but I think there's enough people now that are interested in doing that we can really start to push that into our decision making.
Yeah. Well, I would say that the whole sustainability topic is the biggest threat for the industry, but also the biggest lifeline that it can grab and hold on to and position itself as a lead by example community within the maritime community. Yachting has all the ingredients to take the lead. We have worked with affluent people that are the smartest in the world and definitely working on this in any other business than their yachting hobby. So let's not underestimate the owners and clients, especially focus on future clients that maybe we currently not tap into successfully, and be proactive. This needs to be a new business model and not just a tweak or a feature. So definitely.
At the end, even we are not proactive, regulation, insurance, finance, taxes will hit us. So sooner or later we'll have to do something. So as you say,
that's the threat part, and at the same time we have a huge opportunity always in front of us with working with such an affluent clientele, a flexible industry where everything is possible. So it's not impossible. It's actually a great opportunity and time to be in. But we need to grab those opportunities before they become responsibilities.
Yeah,
I think as well that sharing of information that we've touched on, it's just so key, and that sharing both within the industry itself and being really open and transparent and honest about sustainability and what we're doing, but it's also beyond the industry. And as you say, yachting has the potential to really lead in a lot of ways, and we need to be basically sharing that information beyond the industry. I think is, we can start to see real improvements beyond what we're also doing then, which becomes really interesting.
So let's all meet on the 10th of September.
Please. Highlighting that, absolutely. Make that part of our yachting package.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tamara. Thank Rob. Actually, I think it's been very enlightening. So I think, we agree again that sustainability isn't just a trend, it's a necessity for the future of the superyacht industry and our planet. So by embracing sustainable practices, we can protect the natural environments that make yachting such a unique and rewarding experience. So it's up to all of us, as we said, so industry leaders, yacht owners, crew members alike, to commit to sustainability and ensure that our oceans remain healthy and vibrant for generations to come. So one thing to remember is that every little small effort counts. So let's work together to create a more sustainable future for yachting. Thank you.